Welcome back, everyone. Thank you again for joining us for another great session. We've got KERIM Ghibli joining us from OnePoint. OnePoint is a marketing agency that helps out small businesses and works closely with small businesses. So demystifying marketing is the topic, and we're looking forward to KERIM joining us. So as the CEO of OnePoint, KERIM Ghibli has driven innovation, transformation, and best practice in marketing. He has always strived to have a client-focused business that delivers commercial outcomes through the integration of multiple marketing and communication disciplines. OnePoint has won many awards, including 2 AMIA Awards. In 2009, at the peak of the GFC, they won the Deliottes fastest growing business in New South Wales and ACT for a business under 15 years of age and under 20 staff. Please welcome KERIM.
Thank you. Yeah. So when I was considering the title Demystify Marketing, I wasn't trying to be mysterious. I was considering that as the customer moves closer and closer to the center of the business, the definition of marketing becomes broader and broader. My conclusion is that marketing means different things to different businesses and at different stages of those businesses. And whilst there's a clear overlap of the challenges, over time I've come across, I guess, 3 that are repetitive. One is that sense of clarity. What does success look like? The second is strategy, and what are we going to do? And the third is execution. How are we going to do it? Whilst today's discussion is really about the SMEs, I want to touch on some of the bigger businesses I had the pleasure of working with, and much of the marketing focus was on brand awareness and building trust. And their return is measured a little bit differently. It's in this case, or in the cases that I've had experience, it was measured on the GP of their products and services. And there's something to learn out of that as well. I don't want to ignore it, because when I talk about SMEs, I'm talking about a different style or a different look of return on investment. And I know some SMEs shy away from the discussion of brand building because, it takes time and they want immediate return. But I will share a personal experience I had as a consumer. So not as a marketer, as a consumer, on the value of developing a brand through your marketing efforts. I remember some time goes quick, but it was about 20 years ago. My dad retired and my brothers and I decided to buy Dad a new car. He'd never had a new car, and we thought, okay, let's go and let's do something special for him. And so we went, at the time, we had to look at 2 local brands and 2 European brands, and the local brands at the time, I think it was the Holden Statesman and the Ford Fairmont Ghia, and then we looked at Jag and Mercedes-Benz. And Mercedes had just launched the new design C-Class. It was interesting exercise because in the end, Dad went with the Mercedes, and it was 2 things, because as you know, when you're purchasing, you're driven by the emotional component, which is the larger part of your brain, and then by the rationale, right? And Mercedes was able to satisfy both. It made him feel good, but the brand had built up a lot of trust in the consumer. But what was interesting out of this exercise, is that I pulled out my spreadsheet, put all the features of the 4 cars in there, and I roughly worked out that out of the $74,000 that I'd spent, $30,000 was for the little star with the 3 points on the front grille. And that was the brand value that Mercedes had built. And that's where they were getting their GP, and that's where they were getting their return on investment. But to support that, Dad drove that car for 15 years, and it was brilliant. And he felt really good about it. So I wanted to touch on that because we're going to move away from brand and we're going to move to other KPIs or goals for SMEs. So when we look at goals for SMEs and we start to unpack all the things, all the different elements of marketing, and we start to pack them all in, I go back to that first challenge of clarity. It's about goal setting. And even when you think about, the first thing they say, it's that top line figure, we need to increase sales. So my first question is, where's the sales coming from? And they're going, but that's why I hired you. I said, yes, that's right. But there are 3 areas that sales can potentially come from. And my suggestion is always, let's have a look at your churn. Retention is very, very important. It's the most cost-effective way to keep your sales figure growing. The second is to cross-sell and upsell. Yeah, you've already got a relationship with the customer. They trust you. You know them. They know you. You know them. So cross-selling and upselling is the next thing that I look at. And then thirdly, it's the new business acquisition. This is the most expensive, the most difficult one, I guess, of the three, right? So these are so even when we're setting goals, it's not just by setting that goal, it's about giving that goal definition, right? Then secondly, technology. Look at your CRM, the profiles, the segmentation. I know Erica touched on some of these. Customer journey design, is it able to track and report as you go through? Does it have the automation in the back end? So technology has to be the second consideration. And that's the second challenge that we find. A lot of people haven't put the time aside or the investment to build out that back end, if you like. And thirdly is making sure all your marketing assets are in line. You know, your website, the content that you're creating, the social media platforms, the landing pages, are they all aligned? These are the three key things that whenever we start working with a business, they all seem to always consistently come to the forefront as a challenge. So if you take away anything from this session or this discussion, this conversation, it's goal setting, good technology, and brand consistency and messaging across all your marketing assets. Now that you're ready to go, it's all about test. We love, setting up some sandbox testing environments and looking at, how the market responds before you go out there and, have a fully fledged media budget that's across all your channels. It should be like a flywheel. Marketing should be like a flywheel. It should be building momentum upon momentum and getting better and better, because as you start to dive deeper in understanding your consumer, your customer, where they're going, it's constantly improving, understanding which channels work best and which messaging works best across these channels. I'll share with you a really simple case study that really we implemented these three things. So we were called in by one of a Mazda dealership, someone that we knew over many years, and they said, we have this challenge and we're wanting to build within our PMA, which is their permitted marketing area, within their zone, if you like. And one of the things we started to look at, we started to set some very clear goals. What did we want to achieve, and which areas were we weak in? How were we going to strengthen our our awareness in those areas and build a value proposition that was engaging? And interesting enough, and I don't want to touch on this too much, but it's an important point. Often when you speak to people today and you talk about marketing, the first thing that comes to mind is, social media. And whilst social media has revolutionized everything we do in marketing, it's such a powerful platform. I often get concerned because I think people, they think that's all there is, and they're in there, they're playing with it, they're trialing things, and it's fantastic. But often there are other opportunities. And in this case, we identified an area that was weak, and we then decided to see if there was a hub. And we had found there was a sailing club, and it was very well frequented, had a big membership base, big social media following. And so we decided to partner up with them, and we had an agreement in the sponsorship where we could use their email campaigns to promote our business every time we had something going on. And we used their social media platform to also promote that. And so that, compounded by some of the digital marketing that we did, letterbox drop was extremely powerful in that area. We ran this mail drop box campaign in those weak areas. Long story short, we not only excelled in those areas, but we were able to track everything, because even with our social media, email campaigns, print media, we drove everything back to our landing pages, where we were able to measure where the leads were coming, or where the leads were coming from, which channels were performing best. And one of the considerations that I made, which saw the campaign perform even much better, was we started to consider, where is the customer in the buying cycle? Because not everybody that wants to buy a car is ready to book a test drive. Someone may want to know, what's my car valued? I want to get my car valued. Another one may want to know, what deals have you got on? What demos have you got available, particularly at this point in time where dealerships are struggling to get cars in. Another one was, I want to download more information on the car that I particularly like. And last but not least, the most important one is, can I book a test drive? So when we took all these into consideration, we were generating 300 leads per month. Now, it's not hard to do the maths. If you multiply that by $50,000 per car, it's a lot of money. And so we went from the bottom of the pack to the top of the pack in the metro area and that particular dealer. So we took into consideration, the customer journey, the customer experience. We had a goal for the areas that we were not strong in. So we paid attention to how we could partner them. We just didn't think about social media. We didn't just think about Google AdWords or Google display ads. We had a blank canvas, and we started from, how are we best going to engage the customer? How do we best deliver a message that is at the right time to the right person? And these were some of the things that, often people wonder why their marketing is not working. Is because you've got to add up the dots. You've got to understand, okay, these are my goals, and then work backwards. You got to reverse engineer your outcome. And in doing so, technology is an incredible enabler to that process. And I don't want to necessarily leave out the fact that your branding, your messaging, your creative is all important to this. So marketing doesn't have a silver bullet. Marketing, you have to make a greater consideration of all the elements around you. And quite often, like I said, when I speak to people, they'll say, oh, I'm on LinkedIn, or I'm on, Facebook, or I'm on Instagram, and I'm on TikTok, and it's not working. Just being on a channel doesn't necessarily guarantee you'll get a result. It's a full end-to-end plan that will see the likelihood of success to be a lot greater than if you just tackle it in that way. Eob mentioned that, during the GFC, we won the fastest growing business in New South Wales and the ACT. And to be honest, we cheated a little bit, because we did this through acquisition as well. It wasn't just a natural organic growth. We happened to be in a strong financial position, and there was a lot of agencies that were struggling, digital agency, PR agencies, branding agencies, and we swallowed them up. But what came out of it was all these, these channel expertise all saw their channel as the answer to the customer's problem. Out of that result, or out of those discussions, I actually became channel agnostic. And I started to consider, what is the customer journey that we're trying to map out here? And then as you look at your touch points along that journey, you start to think, well, what channel will deliver the best experience for my customer at that particular point in time? And when we started to strip out the channels and think about the customer journey, it changed completely how we approached our marketing efforts. I recall a few years back, we were talking to a fit-out company, and they wanted to speak to architects. And so in that conversation, that you're saying how difficult they were to talk to. So we used, as an icebreaker, we sent out, it was like a box, a ribbon, there was some merchandising inside, a beautiful brochure, and that was our first touch point. Right? And then our second touch point was followed up by a telemarketer. Then the third one was, the third touch point was an email, right through to a one-to-one. And even that we mapped out, and, one of the things that is really important in the entire process of from marketing to sales is the discovery process. And so we helped our customer, even though it was in the sales part of that process, we had already delivered the marketing qualified lead. It now needed to be a sales qualified lead. We helped in that process, and we said, okay, in that exercise, we need to identify what is the problem that we're solving. Until we understand the problem, we really don't have the right to sell. And so we carried that right through. And the good thing about technology these days, you can go from your marketing or your advertising channel, whether that be LinkedIn, and you can tag the whole process right into your sales funnel and then track it right through to a conversion or not conversion of the sale. So these are my key takeaways, and I'm conscious of my time, but these are the things I want you to take away today from this session and considerations. But I go back to my initial three. You need to think about getting that goal setting really clearly defined, reverse engineer from there, get your technology to support the process. And just another point on technology is there are some marketing automation platforms that once you put your customer details in, they go out to the World Wide Web, gather as much information or whatever information is available out there, and populate and enrich your CRM. And with AI becoming more and more sophisticated, a few years ago, I used to always say the marketing automation platform is the rocket, the AI is the fuel to that rocket. And as we continue and proceed into the future, I think that, I'm confident that anybody who doesn't have a marketing automation platform, it's like somebody who doesn't have Xero or MYB and they're still trying to do their accounting on books. It's just not going to happen. It's just going to be one of those tools that without them you can't do business. So these are the key things. So you've got planning, clarity, definition, technology, and making sure that all the tools that once you've engaged are all aligned. Like I said before, all your tools are aligned. So that way, as you connect the customer through the journey, there's a consistent brand, there's a consistent message, and they don't feel like it's like I've seen some of them, they look like pizza, all these different shapes and sizes. But so these are the key takeaways from me. And thank you for listening. And I know I'm within my time and I was a little bit late starting, but I wanted to keep it simple because I think if I leave those three key messages with you and not inundate you with too many other things, you'll keep them and just stay focused on those three things. So thank you for listening.